Hey everyone, this is Jen and you're watching BPD Woman. On this channel, you will learn how to more effectively live and manage your borderline personality disorder. Using my own personal anecdotal experience after living with the disorder for the last 21 years, combined with practical skills such as DBT, I will help navigate you with solution-based approaches so that you can lead a more effective life, whether that's in love, relationships, career, or financial stability. I'm not a life coach or a therapist or a psychologist, but I can answer one very important question that most of those folks cannot, which is, what is it like to live with borderline personality disorder? I was diagnosed over 20 years ago, and ever since then, I've committed to my recovery with blood, sweat, tears, literally, and money and time. I have every book, every workbook. I have reread them both, and I've used my skills in combination with attending about 4 to 6 rounds of DBT. In addition to, I keep on top of clinical research and important studies. So, if you do have BPD, congratulations, because you do have one of the most highly treatable, well understood personality disorders with the highest recovery or remission rate, or what they would call remission of behaviors. So, if that all sounds good to you, please hit subscribe and the bell below so you never miss a beat. I produce anywhere from 3 to 5 videos a week, all on different content. And let's get into today's video. So today I want to talk about stinkin' thinking. I'm sure you've heard that term before. Stinkin' thinking is more commonly known as cognitive distortions. And today's video, that's what I want to talk about. The short and very strong connection between cognitive distortions and borderline personality disorder, and how not to let stinkin' thinking affect your life and hijack your emotions, and how you solve problems that come up. When I attended DBT, I actually did 2 back-to-back rounds of DBT about 6 years ago now, so I was almost in it for a whole year. A lot of things would come up in the literature and their teachings, and I would say to myself, you know, because I would research different mental health issues, right? Like if I was feeling something like, you know, I don't know, anger, something, I would like Google anger and then like look for news articles. And then, so a lot of this information would kind of permeate. And I had kind of a cache of articles and, past knowledge from therapy. Things just kind of intertwined. And when I started hearing some of the things that the psychologists or the leaders in the DBT groups were talking about, I would say to myself, well, that sounds a lot like cognitive distortions. And so then I bought this book called Self-Esteem. It's by Matthew McKay and Patrick Fanning. I'll put it up there. I'm sure there is a newer version, but there's lots of great information in here, including a section on challenging your thoughts, which has always been helpful to me to see them out on paper and challenge them, right? Like for me, I like black and white data, right? So like if I write a worry list and I write down 10 worries and none of them have come true, then as I move forward in life, I can use that as a guide to be like, well, 10 out of 10 times, that worry that you had never came to be. So I keep that in mind if I start to obsess. So as I'm going through DBT, they talked a lot about like black and white thinking and filtering and shoulds and personalization. And I thought, a lot of this DBT material sounds super familiar, like cognitive distortions. And so that's what I want to go over today. I'm going to go over several very common cognitive distortions. I will name about 10 that I pulled off of a website. I'll read a quick description, and then I'm going to go into a few of them that I think most closely apply to BPD. If you have never heard of cognitive distortions, Cognitive distortions are a distorted way of thinking, essentially. It can either be negative or positive, but it is an ineffective way of thinking that is extreme in its presentation. So it could be a positive. It doesn't always have to be a negative cognitive thought, but as we'll see with filtering, but they do tend to either go black or white. And so if you're living with borderline personality disorder, if you're recovering, then you're trying to reduce that black and white or that emotional ability in the way that you see things in extremes. So again, check this book out, Self-Esteem. I don't get anything by plugging this book, but I have found it very helpful. It'll list very specific cognitive distortions. In fact, there's a chapter on each of the major cognitive distortions with real-world examples of what they look like in other people's lives that they've interviewed for the book, in addition to some practice guides. So let's go into it. So I'll read off some quick fire ones and I'll put up some screenshots. So here's the first one: all or nothing thinking, sometimes called black and white thinking. If I am not perfect, I have failed. Either I do it all right or not at all. All or nothing thinking, also called black or white thinking. Does that sound familiar? Number 2, mental filter. Only paying attention to certain types of evidence, noticing our failures but not seeing our successes. So looking at one thing but not the entire picture. Jumping to conclusions. There are 2 key types of jumping to conclusions: mind reading, imagining how we know others are thinking, and fortune telling, predicting the future. Emotional reasoning. Assuming that behavior we feel a certain way must be true. I feel embarrassed right now, so I must always be an idiot. Labeling. Assigning labels to ourselves or other people. I'm a loser. I'm completely useless. They're such an idiot. Okay. Overgeneralizing. Seeing a pattern based on a single event or being overly broad in the conclusions we draw. Everything is always rubbish. Nothing ever good happens. There you can see kind of that extreme language, never always, never always. They're very extreme ways that fall into kind of black or white thinking, because nothing's always, and nothing's always, all the time. Disqualifying the positive, discounting the good things that have happened or that you have done for some other reason. That doesn't count. Magnification, catastrophizing, and minimization, blowing things out of proportion, which is catastrophizing, thinking the worst, or inappropriately shrinking something to make it seem less important. Using critical words like should, must, ought can make us feel guilty or like we failed. If we apply shoulds to other people, the result is often frustration. And that also can be applied to the self. When you tell yourself, I should have exercised today, I should have done better on my work project, whatever. And like I've said, I never should on yourself. Don't should on yourself. And personalization, this is my fault. Blaming yourself or taking responsibility for something that wasn't completely your fault. Conversely, blaming other people for something that was your fault. So it goes either way. So now what I want to do, now that we've talked about the 10, I want to focus in here on a few that I personally have had the most trouble with and how they present in my borderline behaviors and thought patterns and what those kind of tend to look like day to day. I'll also preface this discussion by saying that those of us with BPD, we have led, traumatic lives or invalidating lives. And so, of course, we struggle with things like perceptions and self-image and how we see others, how we see the world. And we usually see the world through a lens of ourselves. And so if you've brought up to have these rigid thought patterns and you can't trust yourself, then it's even all the more difficult to live in this gray area. And so you do tend to live in extremes. And another thing that plays into this, at least for my money, is that for me, it's very hard to sit and wait. It's especially like right now, my calendar is so busy lately and I find myself splitting a little bit more into some of my thinking, or like, I'm like, okay, I'm really busy. I don't have time to think on this. So boom, this is my decision, right? So the quicker the mind moves, for me, I find a lot of these distortions start popping up a lot more frequently. And so I want to say that if you are experiencing these distortions, it's totally normal if you have BPD. It is fixable. The thing that you just have to remember, at least that worked for me, was that to slow down. And with practice, these things tend to come a bit naturally. But when I'm definitely feeling more dysregulated, of course, these skills are harder to access. So let's get going. Black and white thinking, number one, all or nothing thinking. So black and white thinking. If I'm not perfect, I failed. You know, the way that I think, for me, this is usually presented, and I used to joke with my therapist. I said, you know, what did she said, oh, you're being judgmental, or you're being quick to jump to a conclusion. I'm like, well, of course I am. Jumping to conclusions is the fastest way to get to black or white thinking. So black or white thinking for me, now I'll try to stop myself. Like if I feel like I'm going in one direction or the other, I'll be like, okay, it can be this and it can be that. Here's an example. So I'll be like hanging out with a friend for a while, and sometimes these can fluctuate like within a matter of a couple of hours and sometimes days. And if I'm feeling more dysregulated, it can be even quicker. So I'll be hanging out with a friend or something, and we'll be having a good time, and I'll be like, wow, they brought me a little gift. That's nice. We had this really awesome conversation, and I think they're a really good friend, and I really like them. And then maybe I'll get to know a little bit more about them, right? Like I'll be like, I'll see some of the decisions they make, and I'm just like, this person is a moron, right? Like they are really fucking up their life right now. And then I'll be like, then I'll start to think, well, I don't want to be around this person. Like this person's going to creep in on my life. And I don't want to get dragged down with them. And that's really, if you feel like that, not only I tend to feel guilty about judging the other person, but then I also feel guilty about myself. Like I start thinking, well, what are you doing? Like, do you not want friends? Of course you want friends. So why are you being so hard on this person? And I think, you know, and I've heard that a lot in my life, like you can be really tough on people and hard. Maybe that's a defense mechanism so that I push people away. Now what I try to do if I feel myself going that way is one, I'll use a skill called opposite action, and I'll post a video that I did about opposite action here. So if I'm beginning to feel like I want to act out on this black or white thinking. So like if I feel like my friend's a moron and they make really poor decisions, then perhaps I might tend to just start ignoring them or not talk to them anymore. Instead, I'll reach out, you know, I'll challenge my behavior by doing the opposite action, which for me might be like, if I feel maybe like I'm ignoring them or distancing myself a little bit, I will instead send a really cute picture of my dog, you know, or I'll send a funny meme that I know they might like. And instead of either thinking my friend is a moron, which is black, and then white, which would be like, I really like hanging out with her. She was really thoughtful. I now try to say both to remedy this distortion. I really like hanging out with my friend, and we had a good time, and she's thoughtful, and she makes some really poor life decisions, but that's her life to live. Okay, so let's go to jumping to conclusions. Big one for me. I don't know about for you. For me, it's really hard to let things play out. I feel a great sense of anxiousness when I don't get a text reply right away. You know, my mind starts racing off if I'm not in a clear-headed mind. So I'll think, you know, this is how it'll look. I won't get a text reply. And so I'll be like, they hate me. Oh my God, they're not going to be my friend anymore. Did I say something stupid? Let me go back. Let me scroll through all of my previous messages and reread them. Okay, I reread them. All right, I don't sound too crazy. Okay, I think I'm good. Boop. Oh, and then a text comes up and I'm like, oh, well, you know, they weren't mad at me. They weren't going to block me. We've lived and grown up in a certain state of uncertainty. And sometimes that can be really extreme. At least for me, it was. You never knew what was coming next. You know, were your parents going to be there? You know, were you going to live in a safe environment? Would you be validated? Would you be picked up from school? Would your mom forget? And so sitting in the gray and letting things play out has brought with it in the past like a great deal of anxiety, because you couldn't really ever expect something stable, at least in my case, to consistently occur within that environment. And so it's easier to be like, okay, well, I need to know what's coming, so let me just go ahead and make up my mind for this decision. Okay, they hate me. Great. Now I know they hate me because they haven't texted me, and now I can like live with that and move on with my life. It just makes sense. We want to soothe ourselves right away. We want to get rid of that anxiety, push it away, and just get to what we think the decision is going to be. Unfortunately, we will fulfill our self-fulfilling prophecy by pushing somebody away. In my case, if I start ignoring them, if I start ignoring the text because I think they're ignoring me, then that's just going to trigger them to think, well, there's something wrong with Jen, so what's going on with her? And now we're like in this weird space. So, and fortune telling is another one. Mind reading, and then there's fortune telling, you know, telling yourself things like, I'm always going to be alone. I'll never be over my BPD. You know, they're always going to know something's wrong with me. Oh, people are always going to see me as crazy. Now what I'll try to do, let's go back to the texting example. Now what I will try to do is I'll just let the text play out. You know, I will, you know, send something, and one of the keys here for me is to always be acting in a way that I feel good about myself. And there's this other book, which it's actually right here, but it's propping up my camera. It's called The Four Agreements, and it's by Don Miguel Ruiz. And I have a few of his books, and I'll put up a screenshot of what the book looks like. You can get on Amazon or Kindle. Great book. And there's 4 agreements. Don't take anything personally. Be impeccable with your word. Always do the right thing. And I forget the 4th one. But for me, it's, you know, be impeccable with your word. And so if I am sending a text, or if I'm having a conversation and I am being impeccable with my word, which means I'm not being sarcastic or, you know, being hurtful or, you know, betraying my own ethics, then I can feel good about sending out a text or having a conversation and waiting for it to play out. I think a lot of the anxiety in the jumping to conclusions comes because we maybe perhaps feel bad about something we've done, right? And so we want to just like get it over with, pull that Band-Aid off. Now, again, it can be very difficult, but I'll be, you know, I will say to myself, excuse me, they're not mad at me. I haven't done anything wrong. We're on perfectly good terms. Do not send another text because you're going to sound a little bit needy. You don't know that you're going to be, and then I'll say to myself, you don't know that you're going to be alone forever. Like, you know, do what's right for you. Don't get in. You could go out and any one of us can go out tomorrow and find another relationship to be in. The key is it going to be the good or the right or the best relationship? Who's to tell? Let's go to emotional reasoning. So emotional reasoning suggests that we are because we feel, right? Emotional reasoning. Does that sound familiar? Borderline personality disorder. So for me, you know, it could look like this, right? Like, I'll get up, I'm having a really great day. I'll have a bunch of clients, people be reaching out to me. Let's just say this is a Monday. And I'm like, okay, like, I've got this. Like, my financial outlook is good. I'm stable. I'm being able to pay my bills. People are reaching out to me. And then, you know, the next day, it'll be a couple of clients, but not a lot, or maybe somebody cancels, and I'll be like, oh God, great. I'm gonna be destitute. I'm a loser. They don't like me. This is really terrible. What's gonna happen? So the emotional reasoning essentially is, I feel, therefore I am. Well, the thing about feelings and emotions is they are fluid, and they come and they go, and they come and they go. And pretty soon one emotion is going to be replaced by another emotion. The key is not to like glom onto it and like ruminate over it. So, you know, your financial outlook is not determined on a day-to-day basis, not generally speaking, as an example. So, you know, like the example here in this little clip art says, I feel embarrassed, so I must be an idiot, right? Well, no, you're not. And an example that I'll use is that, you know, I've met this local police officer in my area, not because I was arrested, I just happenstance, I've run into him a few times. I first saw him about a year ago, and then I saw him recently. And about a year ago, I was in a relationship, but when I talked to him, I was like, this guy's really cute. I want to ask him out, but I didn't. And so then I saw him again randomly, had a quick little conversation. And I'd had his phone number from like a personal matter that he helped me out on. So a year had gone by. And then a few days ago, I saw him again. And I was like, you know what? Life's short. I'm going to ask this guy out. I'm going to go for it. And, you know, and I waited a few days and I thought of like the perfect thing to say because, you know, that's what I do. And, you know, I drafted it in my iPhone note before I sent it. Don't want to make it too long. Don't make it too short. Anyway, I sent it and it did, you know, and it was cool, man. I acted cool. I was like, hey, like, you know, I don't know if you're unattached, but like, I think you're funny and a nice person. By the way, I think you're good looking. Anyway, would you like to hang out sometime? This is a picture of me. If I don't hear from you, no worries, right? Like it was not heavy. It wasn't like, I didn't do a guilt trip. It was, you know, to the point and not smothering. And I didn't hear back that evening, and I didn't hear back the next morning. And so again, this kind of goes back to the jumping to conclusions. I started worrying and I started thinking, you know, when I sent it, I felt good. I felt like empowered. I'm like, yeah, you feel strong. Good for you. He likes you. He thought you were funny. Like, you know, you're charming. And then when I didn't start to hear back from him, I was like, you're a loser. You know, oh, that was so silly. Why did you send that text? Like, oh, he's gonna think you're so dumb. Like, and then a couple hours later, he did reply. And he's like, hello, Jen. You know, he's like, I'm very flattered. He's like, I am, however, you know, involved in a happy relationship. And then I texted back and I said something to the effect of like, oh, always the good ones are taken, you know, but stay safe out there. Like, she's a lucky gal. Boom, done. He like liked my last comment. We're done with the conversation. So in that, you know, moment between waiting for him, and it wasn't long, you know, like I sent it, then I felt like, I sent it. And then, you know, then I was like, fuck it, man, put yourself out there. Like, life's short. Like, I could be dead tomorrow. Like, I'm gonna be like, I like you. Do you like me? Check this box. Let's go on a date. So I felt good about myself, you know, I acted on it. And part of the thing about emotional reasoning is to tell ourselves that we believe in ourselves, right? So if I didn't hear back from him, although my mind started to go in that, like, you're a loser, he's going to think you're silly, why would he like you? He probably knows you have borderline, whatever. I thought, no, like, I did think that for a minute, but then I caught myself and I was like, you know what? He would be pleased as pie. Pleased as peach pie to like go on a date with you. Like, he would be one lucky guy. Like, if he says no for like any other reason than like he's attached or, you know, he's too busy, that's his loss, man. You know, like, I'm a cool gal. So that's the way I pull myself out of kind of that extreme thinking. All right. Let's talk about overgeneralizing. Yeah. Okay. So seeing a pattern based on a single event or being overly broad in the conclusions we draw. For instance, you know, and it uses this language, always, nothing, you know, never. It's like that black or white speech, literally. And for instance, an example would be, okay, if I, if by the basis of the one conversation that I had with that cop where I was like, do you want to go out? And he said no. Okay. So now I say to myself, and this is what I said the next day to my friend, I was like, okay, you know what? So what? I said, you know what? He's taken. I texted her. I said, he's taken. I said, but you know what? I put myself out there. And she's like, yeah, that's right. You put yourself out there. And I said, yeah, that's practice. And she said, the next one. I was like, yeah, that's right. But if I was overgeneralizing, which I have done, then I would have said, no one's ever going to love me. I'm going to be alone forever. He hates me. This is just so bad. Everything, all the time happens like this. I'm always rejected. Now, if you feed that thought over and over and over, that thought will get bigger, bigger, and bigger. When you feed something by nature, it gets bigger. And when you starve it, it gets thinner, and then it dies, and then it goes away. So you want to be careful about what you're feeding your mind and your body and your soul, because it is all pretty well connected, even though it doesn't always seem that way. Magnification or catastrophizing, big one for me. I'm a big catastrophizer, like, why does my boss want to talk to me? Oh my God, what is that lump that I feel? Oh my God, it's cancer. Like, why I can't find my cat. Did she get out? Like, she's going to be dead. These are catastrophizing. And again, if you grew up in a chaotic environment, unstable environment, if you grew up in fear, then that was your baseline. You're used to that. So why, if you have 20 years of fear, why would on the 21st year of your life, you suddenly not expect something bad to happen? But the key is now that, like, it can be a good life, and not everything has to be magnified as bad or magnified as all good. So so catastrophizing is clearly very easy to explain. You worry about the worst possible scenario. A bump on your finger is cancer. Your boss wanting to talk to you is, you're going to be fired. When oftentimes these things don't come to fruition. And one of the ways that I started trying to combat this is by making a catastrophizing list. So I'd put my catastrophizing worry, like, he wants to talk to you because he's going to fire you. And then I would write the reality outcome. And you could, like, sketch this. You could put on your iPhone note, whatever works for you. So I'd put the catastrophizing worry. I'm about to be fired because he wants to talk to me. And then I would put out the real world outcome, which is he just wanted to talk to me about an upcoming trip he's having. Now, what's helpful about seeing this again, at least it was for me, the more scenarios that I can see play out. And by the way, almost never, ever, ever did any of my worry catastrophizings come out to be that one thing that I was so focused on that was definitely going to happen. Almost never. And that way you can go back and look at it. Okay, now then the next time that your boss wants to talk to you, you're like, well, he probably isn't ready to fire me, because that doesn't ever seem to happen according to my worry list. He's asked to see me twice now, and both times I thought I was going to be fired, and that didn't happen. So perhaps I could just relax a bit, go in, and just be focused on what my boss needs, and be more effective at work. Now, magnification and minimization can also sometimes be positive. What do I mean? So you meet a guy or a gal and you go out on a date, and maybe you have a couple of really great long conversations on the phone. And so now you're like, this is the love of my life. This person is fantastic. This is magnification, not catastrophizing, although catastrophizing is a kind of magnification. But it's what I would call positive magnification. This is the love of my life. Oh my God, we're soulmates. But you've only known the person, like, you've only seen them face to face a total of like 5 hours. So, and this can also be part of jumping to conclusions, like predicting the future. Like, we're going to be together forever. This is going to be perfect. And it also plays into emotional reasoning, You feel a certain way in love, infatuated. You look to the future. Oh, we're going to be together forever. And then you magnify the relationship into this thing that it's really not. And So that's just to illuminate that these types of distortions can be positive and also be detrimental at the same time. And I think you're also seeing that they all kind of flow together. If you have extreme black or white thinking, then you're generally using overgeneralizing terms like ever, always, never, ought, things of that nature. If you jump to conclusions, then oftentimes you're magnifying or catastrophizing. You know, oh, he wants to talk to me, I know he's gonna fire me, right? So that's combining jumping to conclusions and catastrophizing. Emotional reasoning, I feel this way, therefore I'm stupid, which is a labeling. I think I'll stop there. Well, actually, let's do one more. Personalization. Another good one. This is all my fault. Blaming yourself or taking responsibility for something that wasn't completely your fault. You know, sometimes if it rains, I think it's me. You know, for me, there's been a lot of self-doubt and fear about what people will think about me. You know, I was always in trouble with my parents, so now I'm always in trouble with the world. And so, you know, it could look like this. You see somebody walking down the hallway where you live, and they're kind of looking to the ground, or they're avoiding you, and they've got kind of a scowl on their face. And what do you think? What do you interpret that face to be? For me, and this also goes to hypervigilance, always looking out, looking over your shoulder, being aware of everything, danger, danger, danger. For me, it might be, oh, they haven't talked to me. They must be mad at me. What did I do recently? They hate me. Oh, I don't want people to hate me. Oh, fuck, why can't I ever be better with my BPD, etc. It's interpreting an event through the lens of you. So it must be this because of me. It must be that way because I did this. You know, they're unhappy because I said something. They're not returning my call because they hate me. And it's easy to get into this because, again, we feel anxious. We have a low sense of self-validation. And so if you're not used to validating yourself, then you're looking to other people for clues and signals in life that you're worth it. Not the case. So the way to do this is, again, to build up your self-esteem. Doing things that make you feel masterful, whatever that is. For me, it would be saying it to combat this. It would be like, he has this look on his face and I have no idea why. Or come up with other interpretations. Maybe he just got bad news. Maybe he's really tired. Maybe he's in a rush. Maybe he's about to go have a conversation with somebody that we don't know about. Whenever you feel like jumping to a conclusion and assigning an interpretation, which, believe me, I still do this day. I did it yesterday and I felt like a fool. Instead of asserting a declaration, ask a question. I'll put this up again. The old Walt Whitman quote, "Be curious, not judgmental. Find out what the other solutions are." My name is Jen. You've been watching BPD Woman and the connection between borderline personality disorders and cognitive distortions. And I think that you can see from a lot of what I've talked to today, you have also heard these things presented in DBT or in your borderline therapy or in the borderline realm, whether online, books, news articles, scholarly journals that you've read. It is really worth looking into a book on cognitive distortions because DBT kind of pings them a little bit. They don't really jump into how to get rid of some of these distortions. And I really found this book super helpful. In helping me combat them. And, you know, it's a quick read. I haven't read the whole book, but Self-Esteem is the name of the book. And it talks about cognitive distortion. So clearly there is a link here between how you feel about yourself and how you think. Again, this has been BPD Woman. My name is Jen. Thank you for tuning in. And until I see you next time, and whatever you do, please be effective.